implement technology that will ensure your challenges and goals are met with. And we do this by building close relationships with individuals like yourself, being an open and honest resource, and showcasing our areas of expertise. So our areas of expertise really fall under 3 pillars: data, apps, and infrastructure. A large bulk of our business is on the database side, including data integration, data warehousing, zero downtime migration to latest versions, including 19C. Overall, we help improve performance at the database level. In our applications practice, we do a lot of Apex development, EPM, ERP, we develop custom apps. And lastly, our infrastructure and hardware practice includes Oracle's public cloud offering, bare metal engineered systems. We were actually named Oracle's ODA Partner of the Year back in 2019. So as you can see here, we're very active and recognized within the Oracle community. We do pretty much everything when it comes to Oracle, but these are some of our more broadened areas of expertise. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a very close relationship with Oracle. The people that you see here on this slide represent some of Viscosity's leaders and our Oracle ACEs. These guys present at Open World and Oracle user group conferences all over the globe. These people are eager to meet with you and your team and help uncover how we can best support you. Trust me when I say that there's nothing better than having 4 ACEs in your hand. This slide showcases some of our other services, and I'll just briefly highlight a few of them. In our team at Viscosity, we have experts on Oracle license management that have actually come from Oracle and worked in that space for several years. We provide all of our customers with the best knowledge and best practices on how to manage and maximize your Oracle investment, which is obviously extremely important for businesses. We are probably most known for our zero downtime migrations and upgrade services. We've helped customers migrate from AIX to Linux with zero downtime, and more recently have been helping our customers with upgrading to Oracle 19C. With our performance health checks, we can fix pain points before they become real problems for our customers. Definitely another popular service of ours. And lastly, we have a full stack of DBA services as well. If you have any questions about our services, please reach out to one of us. We're always happy to answer any questions that you might have. So I wanted to showcase the work that Viscosity has put into becoming trusted advisors who have actually written the books on Oracle's latest technologies and versions, anything from virtualization, pluggable databases to Oracle Exadata. My director and I offer complimentary consulting and strategy meetings to assess any of your current projects, pain points, or team goals. So if you're available to connect with one of us, shoot me an email and we'll schedule a time to talk. And in our meeting, I'll be sure to share our resources with you. All right, last slide before I hand it back over to Monica so she can introduce today's speaker. If you haven't already checked out our events page, please do so using the URL you see here. We update this page on a monthly basis with our webinars, workshops, and other events that we have going on, and it is a really great resource. I will be sending out a copy of these slides and a recording of today's presentation to everyone later this afternoon, so just be on the lookout for an email from me. And if you have any questions in the meantime, again, please feel free to email me directly. My email address is here at the bottom of this slide. So with all that being said, thanks for listening, and I'll go ahead and pass it back over to Monica.
Thank you so much, Katie. And everyone, just a reminder, this is a live webinar, so please take advantage of the time you've got with the amazing Jeff Smith. It's such a pleasure for us to be able to have him speaking for everyone today. We're super excited, so I'm glad you're here to join us. A little bit about Jeff. Jeff is a distinguished product manager at Oracle, and it's his mission to help you be successful with Oracle Database using Oracle Database tools. And Jeff empowers users across the globe with Oracle SQL Developer, Oracle SQLCL, Oracle SQL Developer Data Modeler, and Oracle REST Data Services. He's got nearly 2 decades of experience in the commercial software industry with a customer-driven focus. Support, testing, documentation, product management, and marketing, pre and post sales support. He's been helping customers succeed and make the most of their technology investments. And his specialties include Oracle Database, technical writing, software product demonstrations, online community development. Hopefully you follow him on Twitter, and so much more. So if you don't follow Jeff, please do it now. He's just a great source for the community to go to and follow. So we're super excited to have you, Jeff.
Oh, wow. You read the whole thing. That was good.
Everyone's got to know, right?
That's good. Are we good to start?
All yours.
So I'll share my screen. And I apologize. I don't have any slides today. We're just going to do live demo the whole time. And I invite everyone to sit back and just chill and relax because this is being recorded and you can always replay it later. If you want to take notes, feel free. All of the tips and tricks I'm sharing today, I have blogged. You can find those at thatjeffsmith.com. I have resource pages here for SQL Developer and SQL Developer Web. If you're looking for something, Google is a good place to go. I've done tips and tricks videos for YouTube before, so if you want to share that with folks, you know, if you need info, it's out there somewhere. Okay, so I'll break a little bit of news today too, since everyone came out. It's nice to have such a nice audience. Thanks Viscosity, thanks New York Oracle Users Group. I've done stuff with, I've been in and around Viscosity sphere for 5-6 years, and Rich Nemec is one of the best Oracle database presenters in the world that I've ever seen. If you ever have a chance to work with Rich or see him speak, definitely take that up. And he's probably the best dressed Oracle presenter in the world as well. He makes me feel like a schlub. So today, I'm going to show you some tips and tricks in 3 different platforms that all have a very common background. So we have Oracle SQL Developer, which is what you see on my screen right now, I hope. And then we have a command line version of this. And then we have a web browser powered version of this technology. And these tools all originated starting back in about 2005. And we do quarterly updates for most of these products. So the breaking news is, but I never tell people when we're releasing software, but the newest versions of Oracle REST Data Services, which powers SQL Developer Web and SQLCL, if everything comes out right, should be released later this afternoon, East Coast time. If it doesn't come out today, don't get mad at me because I never told you folks that it was coming out today. And if you're seeing this in a recording, you didn't hear me just say that. That was a technical glitch. Let's see, what else do I need to tell you folks up front? Oh, Q&A. I'm happy to take questions as we go. Keep your mics muted and just type them into the Q&A box, not the chat box. That's where you say mean things about me behind my back. The Q&A box is where you type in your questions, and I'll tab over to that and pull those up from time to time and try to take your Q&A as we go. All right. So tips and tricks. What's a tip? So a tip is a thing that I think you should to know to get the most out of the products. If you had the time to read the documentation and watch all the videos and read all the blogs, you wouldn't need me, but no one has time to do that because they're busy doing their job. So thanks for giving me this hour. I hope to give you 3 of these things that can really make you more productive and even happier in your day job when you're working with the database. A trick would be more like an undocumented feature that you would only know about if someone on the inside told you. And we used to have lots and lots of tricks, and we've successfully managed to migrate them all over to the tips category. So hopefully everything I'm showing you today is a documented feature that you could read about in the help books or in the documentation books. So we're going to start with tips and tricks. So I think the first tip and trick I'm going to talk about is preferences, because I see a lot of people, the first time they're in the tool, or even like 10 years in using the tool, things just frustrate them. And spending a couple minutes in here can really change your experience with the tool. So I'm on Windows, but this would be the same on a Mac or on a Linux desktop. Let me just show you the things that I always personally change, and maybe a few of these might speak to you as well. So one thing I like to do is choose a pleasing font. We ship this hack font now, which is kind of nice. It makes things easy to see the difference of, like, for example, am I looking at a 0 or the letter 0. And you can see the number 0 has like that little glyph in the middle of it. So it's clear to see if you're looking at numbers versus letters. And it's a fixed width font. And we did some UX work to make sure that this would be pleasing to folks. But the other thing I'll do is I'll bump my fonts up, especially when I'm doing online presentations. If I'm doing a lot of debug work where stray characters cause issues, especially when you're in strings, I'll also come in here on the display page and I'll enable this show white space characters. So that's why you'll see like this denotes a space versus you'll see that for a tab, or you can see CR, LF pairs in there. That can also get annoying after a while, so you might want to turn that off. The other thing that I'll turn on in terms of like the editor, there's a page in here called PL SQL syntax callers, and I might change one of these schemes. I like the white text on black backgrounds. It's not a true dark mode, but it comes pretty close. If you don't like any of the ways we display information on the screen, like these little parser hints that we give you, if you don't like this yellow squiggly line, you can change this. It's all configurable in here. There's like a rule in here for about anything you can think of, like comments. If you want to see comments in fuchsia, for example, I don't know why you would want to do that, but somewhere in here, they'll say something like code comment. And you can change, like select the text. It's going to do this when I select it. And if I instead wanted to have, that's horrible, but that instead, that's what I get. That's going to bother me until the next time I do this presentation. Another thing that I'll change. So SQL developers, you're sort of, GUI, do everything for the database, right? And the database has, for schemas, maybe 50 or 60 types of objects you can work with. And most folks are only dealing with a subset of those. So when you're browsing your database, this list can get long and annoying. So you can tell us exactly what you want to see when you connect. That would be on the database page. There's something in here called navigation filter. And you'll turn this on, and over here on the right, you'll just tell us the types of things that you want to see. So for example, I don't want to work with analytic views. I changed my mind, but I do want to work with Apex. So I'll turn that on. And that's what affects what I see over here on this left-hand side. And then also if I extend into another schema, I get that same type of object list here on the left. So that can just save you a lot of eye strain and a lot of scrolling and a lot of frustration looking for things in your database. There's probably 10 or 15 more preferences I would look at. So what I would say is if something's annoying you and you don't like the behavior, there's probably a flag you can go and tweak to change that to give you more of what you're looking for. Now, when you are ready to explore the contents of your database, a lot of people will go over here and just start looking for things manually. I will say there's an easier or a better way to do it. So for example, I was doing an example for a colleague this morning, and I created a table for them. And if I want to go look at that table that I just created, I can get there just using my my mouse and keyboard. So I've got the control, you can't see this, but I've got my finger depressed on the control key and I'm mousing over here where it says DB events. And then I click, we'll just go open that table. So I don't have to come over here and go tables and then type DB, and get to it manually. I can just, immediately click into it. And I could do that again. I could say select star from, I don't know what kind of views do I have in here. Tweets view. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to pin this. This is another tip or trick. I'm kind of daisy chaining tips together, but I'm going to do this now. So I've got my view open and I got my table open. If I want to see both of these at the same time, I can right click and say new document tab group. So I've got my table here, my view here, and my worksheet here. And if I wanted to see all three at once, I could do that again. Now on my big fancy monitor, I could even drag this off of the desktop space and I could have full screen views of everything that I want. I can also drag things around. Let's see, so I can put this over here. It can be a little finicky sometimes, so you got to be patient. All right, so I've got my editor here, my table here, and my view here. And if you want to close these or collapse these, you can do the drag and drop thing, or you can right click and you can say, hey, collapse this doc tab group, and it's going to go from having 3 panels to 2. Another thing you can do when you're looking for objects in your database. I know I've got something in my database called imp. So I'm just going to say Alt-G. And it'll automatically set up the find database object panel with the imp text. And then I can click go to do the search. And it didn't actually find anything. But if I wildcard that, it'll find a lot of stuff probably. And I can go across all schemas if I want and all object types if I want. And I can even go and look inside my code if I want. Let's not go against all schemas. So if you turn off all schemas by default, it will just search my current schema. Maybe I'll turn on a couple more here. And if I do that search again, found a lot more things. So this is like now an object navigator, and it's organized by schema and then type. So I've got a view called imp view. I've got trigger source with this imp text in it. If I were to click this, or I think double click this, no, I have to double click down here. Yeah, it opens that for me. And it even tries to take you to the line of code that thinks that pertains to that. So when you're trying to open and find things in your database, those are my couple of tips and tricks around search. Because this is annoying me, I am going to turn off the show white space. Yeah. All right. So more tips and tricks. The type ahead auto completion stuff is one of the more powerful features. And there's a couple of ways you can set this up. The default behavior, which I'm not sure how many people are really going to enjoy, because I'm a control freak and I think most developers are control freaks. I don't mean that in a good way. You like for your tools to do what you want them to do and not have them guess things. But the default behavior in here is this automatic feature for completion insight, which means as I'm typing, if I take my hands off the keyboard long enough, we'll throw this advice in your face. And the advice is going to be as good as what you have typed. And the more I have typed, the better advice I'm going to get, or the closer it's going to get to be what I'm looking for. When I say control freak, what I mean is I want the advice, but I only want it when I ask for it. So now, as I'm typing, I can take my fingers off for as long as I want, and I'm never going to get the advice. I don't get the advice until I hit Control Space Bar. That's what activates the completion for me. Now I can come in and say that, yeah, that's what I want. And that feature extends all over the place. So it's column lists, it's keywords, it's help with functions like decode and case. If you're not familiar with that syntax, you can literally just type case and we'll bring up the documentation link for the case statement. And I think if you scroll down here, there's an example for case. So if I were to do this again, you can see there's this text here. If I click on this, it actually brings up the text from the docs that demonstrates how to use the case statement. So knowing how the insight feature works and then using it to help you versus letting it get in your way, that's a power tip I would consider. Then executing things, you've got history. So everything I've ever executed goes into a history dialog, which I can see down here. A lot of people will leave this open. I don't like sacrificing that much real estate on my desktop, so I usually leave it closed, and I'll just use the keyboard to go through my list. So the keyboard shortcut is Control Up or Control Down. And down and up have no context unless you're actually looking at this list. But if you have it sorted by timestamp, down means most recent to what you've previously executed, and then up would be the opposite direction. The tip here would be if you're working on a specific project, like maybe you're working on a payroll project, and you know you've got an application code that's all over the place, and like your column names, your table names, your procedural aliases, you can put in a filter here. So I did employees, and now when I use my recall, I'm only seeing that code. I will jump to the preferences one more time. I apologize. On the database worksheet page, you can tell us how many queries you want to save or persist to the history, and the default is 100. I think that's way too low. I would go at least as high as 1,000. And then that way, if you forget to save something to a file and you go home and come back to work the next day and you're like, oh crap, I forgot to save my work, there's a good chance it's down here in this history list. Just make sure not to forget to clear that filter, and then you're not going to have to worry about losing things. All right, I see a box in the QA. Is there a way to export preferences across to another PC? Great question, Raju. So the preferences are stored in, so I know not everyone's using Windows, but the majority of people are using Windows. If you go to, oh, how am I going to get there here? It's in your user directory, there's going to be something called app data, and then roaming, and then SQL developer. And then here's my wrong one. It's SQL space developer. System 21.2. These are all of my settings. If I copy this folder over to my new machine, it'll see that when you start SQL Dev up, it'll ask if you want to import those in. That's probably the easiest way. I do have a blog post that shows you step-by-step how to do this, and it shows you how to do it on a Mac as well. I would show you on the Mac right now, but I only know how to do one computer on Zoom at a time as a presenter. So great question. And other people, if you got questions, don't wait for me to ask because we got a lot of material to cover. Just bring them up as you got them, as they pop up in your head. I'm going to do one more tip and trick in the desktop, and then I'm going to switch over to the command line for a little bit. And I'm always happy to come back. So again, based on what you're asking for. So what's the #1 use case for using a tool like SQL Developer? Well, I'll tell you what people use it for, and it makes me a little sad, but it's reality. They run queries, and then guess what they do with this data? They export it to, wait for it, Excel. And then they send those Excel spreadsheets to people, right? Unless maybe they're a more modern customer that has an Apex application and they've built Apex apps and they can just send people links and credentials, and then they can go deal with the data directly in the database. But at the end of the day, we're never going to displace Excel. So what's my tip and trick for exports? Well, I've got a couple. The first thing I would say is, again, I know this is a broken record, but go into the preferences. There's a utilities export page. Here you can set the defaults. So if you're always changing your exports to, hey, I'm always doing JSON formatted to the clipboard, you set that here, and then the next time I come here and do an export, I don't have to touch anything. I can just say next, finish, and then, oops, I cleared my clipboard. Next, finish. Is it not working? 0. Why did that not work? Maybe I found a bug. The other thing you can do Try that again in a second. Is for each export format, you can set the default options there too. So for Excel, if you're always saying, hey, I do want that query worksheet name, you can add this stuff in there. Or for example, maybe for delimited format, if you're always using the same delimiters, like maybe instead of comma, you're using semicolon because you're dealing with Europeans a lot, or you always prefer single quotes to double quotes, you can set that here and you're never gonna have to change it again. So that can save you a ton of time. I'm lazy, so I like to avoid those dialogues as much as possible. So you can actually code the format of the output that you want into your queries. So I can say select CSV employees, and instead of using Control Enter or F9 or this button, I can use F5 or this button, and the output comes back directly in that format. So then here I could copy and paste it out if I wanted to. Or since we support all the SQL Plus commands, I could say CD users, JD Smith, desktop, and say spool, viscosity, CSV, spool off. If I don't want this, I can say set feedback off. And if I want to see clean screen, I can do this. And I run that. What did I do wrong? Spool, CD, set, clear screen. This is the fun of live demo. I type myself into problems all the time. Okay, so that worked. And now if I say, show me my desktop, I should have a viscosity CSV file here. Yep, I open that. Come on, Windows, there we go. So there's my data. And if I scroll down to the bottom, you can see there's no, 100 or 200 or 108 lines selected. It's just exactly the way I wanted. So I never had to take my fingers off the keyboard to get this. These kind of look like hints, but they're actually comments. If you look at the dialog here, the text of the comment is going to match up directly with what I see here. So I can also see I've got JSONs as an option. If I typed JSON in here and then I just ran this, there's my array of JSON documents for each employee. So that's putting the comment directly into the query, but I can also set this as an output mode. I can say set SQL format delimited, and then I could say I want my delimiter to be pipe at pipe, and I want to use single quotes. And we'll say regions just because that's not as fat. And again, we'll say clear screen. So there's that data exactly the way I want to see it. So those are my tips and tricks for SQL Dev. I've got 3 more questions popped up. We'll look at them real quick. SQL developers installed on Citrix, and I'm leaving all my saved changes to the environment at the day's end. So for the anonymous attendee, your Citrix admin is not set up your environment correctly. Citrix has these roaming profiles for authenticated users, and it should be saving your settings there. If it's wiping them out, they're either doing it on purpose or they've done a bad install. So I would open a support ticket with your Citrix admins and say, hey, my settings are getting clobbered. If they're doing it on purpose, that's when you need to come back to what I showed you over here, where you need to find that app data folder and copy that directory out at the end of every day and then paste it back in every night or every morning, I guess. or hopefully you can bill your work hourly, and then that's just a good, easy $200 each day to set up your environment again. Question from Joseph, does export only the selected rows? No, it'll export everything in the grid, I think. If you just want the selected rows, you could probably just copy and paste them out. So Joseph is asking about something that turns out to be a bug. And I have a fix for you, Joseph. That should be fixed in the latest release. If it's not, I can give you a parameter that you can set that disables the thing that you're talking about. Let me give everyone my email address. You can contact me here, and I will send you that fix, Joseph, if you need it. Okay, so let's switch over to SQLCL. SQLCL. What am I going to do? How does they show? No. SQLCL is everything that you like about SQL Developer, everything that you're used to in SQL Plus kind of married together. And then we took all the things you don't like about SQL Plus and tried to fix it. So by that, what do I mean? If you run queries like, oops, I need to set. Sorry, I was doing debugging before. So by the way, we have SQL history in here. There's my history. I run that. We automatically format the output to fit the screen, whereas in SQL Plus, you have to do call format ABC out the wazoo. Here, we're like, no, we know how big your screen is. We know how wide the text is. We'll print it per page. So it looks like the default page size is like 10 records or something. So if I just say set page size 200, and I run that again, there's all 107 rows nicely formatted on the screen for me. And I didn't have to write any code to do that. And I didn't have to do anything funky to enable SQL history. It's just in here. So I'm using the up and down arrow key to see what I've done before. I can also just type history, and it shows everything that's in my history. And you can see I've got more than 100 things in here. If you're wondering about the weird highlighting, I've enabled that. You don't have to use that if you don't want, but I can show you how to turn that on if you want. And you can also see I have this status bar at the bottom too. So it's showing me where I'm at in the buffer. So I could say select one from dual, where state, I don't want to do that, where 1 equals 2, order by 1, describe, fetch first 2 rows. Stupid query, right? But I can see now I'm at cursor position line 5, 19. So I'm like here somewhere. So it's tracking that. And you can also see that I'm in VI insert mode. So I don't know if you can see the cursor really well, but it's blinking there on line 5. If I want to change something like what I have on line 3, all I have to do is use my arrow keys to get to line 3. I'm in insert mode, so I can just overstrike stuff if I want. If I wanted to take out this where clause, I can hit escape, which puts me in VI command mode. Now I can hit DD. So it just deleted that. And now I can hit Control R and it runs that query for me. I can do up arrow. I'm back in the buffer. I can come up here, hit enter, and add my where clause again if I wanted to. If you're like, hey, Jeff, VI mode's fun, but I prefer Emacs, we have Emacs support too. And if you don't know VI or Emacs, since we default you to the VI insert mode, you don't have to worry about getting yourself to a place where you can't escape your way out. It's literally just move the arrows around and just type what you want. And then when you're ready to run something in the buffer, Control R just says immediately run as is. So again, escape. Now I'm in VI command mode. So DD is the VI command to delete the entire line at cursor. There's that. So these tips and tricks from the desktop, a lot of times they apply over here in the command line as well. So I can say set SQL format to JSON formatted. I think that one works. Run this command again. And there's that same output, but instead of rows and columns, I've got a JSON document. 6* from, say, RE tab. Tab does completion. So I've got more than one table that matches to RE. So I could say REG tab. Now I'm getting closer. I think I'll just do that. So there are my regions in a JSON document. This is the default format where we do the smart printing. Oops. Format. I spelled it wrong. Spelled it really wrong. So there's my cleaner feedback again. The tab completion again, let's do a little something fancier. Select star from employees, where I can say F tab. And I can say first name equals Jeff. Sad. Let's see. Right. So there are my J's. I've also got SQLCL set to tell the editor that I want the syntax highlighting on. So I've got keywords in green, I've got identifiers in purple, I have strings in yellow, and I think I have comments in something weird. Yeah. 1, 2. So you can kind of see how that's working. If you don't like that, if you don't like the collars, you can turn it off. You can set the collars to anything that you want. Everyone knows describe, but it's kind of boring. It's a predictable at least, right? So you get a column list. Are the columns nullable and what are the types? We wanted to give people more bang for their buck. So we created a command called info. So it'll tell you the same thing, but it'll tell you a lot more too. So we'll tell you, what are we looking at? It's a table called employees. We'll tell you how fresh the statistics are, how many rows are in the stats, whether or not the table's in memory. We'll give you the table comments. We're telling you what the primary key is, and we show that with the star. And then we also show you the column comments. Then below that, we print a list of indexes, and then below that, we print a list of foreign key constraints. So that's our kind of info on steroids. Now, if you're doing tuning work and you're having performance issues around this table, you might want to know more about your statistics. So if you do info plus employees, instead of showing you the comments, we show you the stats on the columns. So I can see what the low and high values are and the number of distincts and whether or not there are any histograms collected on these columns. So that can come in handy. We've added a bunch of commands over what SQL Plus gives you, and you can see them if you type help. A lot of these are self-explanatory, and you can guess what they do. CTAS builds a create table as select for you. CD changes the directory that we're reading and writing to. Alias, I can create my own commands. DDL generates the DDL for an object. So I can say DDL employees. This takes a second because it fires off a bunch of code to the DBMS metadata package. And the first time you run that, it can take a second to spin up. But here's all of the DDL on this table. And I throw a spool around this and a spool around, oh, I don't know, set SQL format, insert. Now I've got a script that creates the table and populates it for me without writing any code, or I mean, just a couple of statements. So that's my SQLCL in a nutshell, tips and tricks. There's tons of stuff in here. And if you're always, in love with the command line, but then frustrated with the experience that you get in SQL+, we've tried to fix a lot of that stuff in SQLCL. So for example, here in the status bar, it's also showing me how long it took to run my last query. So yeah, I could turn set timing on, but I can just see it immediately here if I want. So last 15, oh, we had some Q&A. I don't have good answers for a lot of these questions. So for importing, can we have a preset setting? For example, all of our cars will be the length of 100. I mean, we have lots of tips that I can show you for imports, but not one that speaks directly to that, Dinesh. Feel free to email me. We can chat more on that. Oh, file content warning pop up when XML type is longer than 10,000 characters. I'm not familiar with that, Paul, but I'm happy to look into it. I just need a note from you so I don't forget. Setting a different language, that can mean two different things. So you can come in here on database NLS and set the language to Japanese. That'll change the messages that come back from the database in Japanese messages, like you'll get Japanese error messages. You can also change the UI of the tool to like 9 different languages. So if you don't want an English presentation up here, we have translated views of like Spanish, Italian, Chinese, Korean, Japanese, German, and French. And if that's not what you're talking about, email me and I'll happy to take another stab at it. And a progress bar for seeing the completion of a table that's being created. No, we don't have that, but that's only because the database doesn't tell us unless it prints to $long ops, which is something you can see in $session. So you can always check $session to see if the database is telling you how much time is left on this session. Okay, I'm going to switch to SQL Developer Web. So this is the newest entry, I would say, to the database tools. We put this out for the first time, I think, in the end of 2017. And it's most of what you need to work with an Oracle database without having anything to install. You just need a browser. So your database administrator obviously sets up a web server and creates a mid-tier and has it talk to your databases. And then they give you the credentials and then you can log in. And so I'm here in a worksheet and I can start doing the same things. Like I've got SQL history, same keyboard shortcuts for running stuff. I've got a formatter. I've got export to the types of files that I want. I got insight. Here are my column names. I've got script execution. Oh, what did I do? So it's even telling me where I've got the error. So the parser is like, hey, dummy, you said and then you didn't give me anything. And group by doesn't make sense is what this is saying. So there's my output. I can't spool this because that would be a security risk. But I could say, I think this would work. Just that will not work because that's dumb. Yep, so there is my output in CSV. I've got create and table I've got create and edit table dialogues. So if I want to know more about this Strava table, I can open it and I can see the data. So we don't open up a new tab. That would be kind of weird in a browser. So we have these things called slider components that come from the right hand of the screen and they kind of fly in. So these are read write if I have the ability to do that. If I wanted to make myself, I guess, faster, I could. This is sad. I'm screwing up my own data now. So that's the new value for that record. But I can see the details on the table. If I wanted to make changes to this table, I can right click on the table. Come on. Oh, it's still thinking. Asynchronous requests. Yep. Wait. When in doubt, refresh. So while I'm doing that, let's go back to the Q&A. I think we caught all the Q&A, and I'll check the chat too, just in case there's questions. All people put questions on the chat. That's okay. Query builder script output. That's a good one. We'll come back and look at that one if we've got time. So Tony, you're having install issues. That's going to be hard to debug over Zoom, but email me, Tony, and I'll help you get it working on your machine. Can I open SQLCL from SQL Dev? No, but SQLCL is inside the SQL Dev distribution. And then also last question, can SQLCL export to Excel? No, but you can export to CSV and then just open it and convert it if you want. All great questions. So what I was going to show was I can edit this table in here too. I'm pretty good at DDL and SQL, but a lot of times I'll forget the esoteric syntax for, like, I don't know, defining an identity clause column. And I like to cheat in here and get help with that. But as I make changes and do yada, 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 there's a DDL page down here that'll say, oh, okay, based on what you clicked, here's the DDL that we're going to run for you. So that's kind of nice. So there's a lot more than just a worksheet in here. I've got a data modeler for reverse engineering my schemas. I've got pages to open up Performance Hub. I can read my alert logs. All this is going to be based on what I can see on my database via who I'm logged in as. This is a brand new feature that we're enhancing in today's drop. So I can create my own reports based on charts. So I think this one might be decent. Yeah, so that Strava table I was just looking at, I've now got it visualized in like 1, 2, 3, I'm slow counter, 6 different charts. So this could be a visualization of any data in your database. It could be $V session, it could be DBA data files, it could be HR employees. Basically, we're talking about like a single series X and Y value, and there's like a bunch of different chart types that you can choose from. I could also switch this over to a grid to see stuff here. What else do we have here of interest? Oops. I've got, so REST APIs. I'm also the product manager for ORDS, or Oracle REST Data Services. So there's like a full REST IDE built into this. By that, I mean REST APIs, like HTTP interfaces to your database. Like instead of connecting to the database and running this query, I can create a REST API and then use something like curl I'll use my Insomnia client. So we're just going to talk HTTPS to the mid-tier instead of going directly to the database. So this is great for building web apps, for automation. Viscosity. I feel bad for spelling viscosity. It's because there we go. So GET request on this API, and I'm going to pass it number 1. So here's the output from this REST API. So I've got a 200. Here's my headers. Here's exactly what we did. And then here's that JSON document that we return. For the DBAs, this instance viewer is nice. It gives you an overview of what's happening in your database. So I can see what my most expensive queries are. These all have drill downs too. So if I click on that, it pulls up the query. I can see the full query text. I can see the execution plan. I can go into active session history and see how long this has taken to run in the past. And I can also fire off a SQL Tuning Advisor task. These are based on licensing. So if you don't have the diagnostic and tuning packs, you don't want to be clicking on these things. And if you're DBA and you don't want people using these, then you need to not grant them privs and exec rights on these packages so they can't touch this stuff. Question from Rajesh, SQL CLI, SQL Developer, or browser-based EM. This is not browser-based, this is not Enterprise Manager. This is SQL Developer Web. Do all of 3 of these create similar loads on the database whenever any query run from these tools? At the end of the day, when you run the queries, there's always going to be a JDBC connection somewhere, either in the mid-tier where the web server is, or from your client that's putting that load on the system. So in general, yeah, the load's going to be similar. And the command line, you know, we're fetching the entire result set all at once. In the GUI, we just do a single fetch at a time and then scroll that cursor as you go through the data set. And in the web, we also page the results. So there might be a little bit of difference in the load, but if you write a bad query, it's going to suck across all 3 platforms, if that makes sense. You can also come in here and look at IO stats and see just what's happening in my system if I want. Or I can double click on weights and get a perf hub page of active session history and see what's going on. So this is 3-4 years old. This is also quarterly released. If you've gone into the Oracle Cloud and spun up an autonomous database, this UI is there by default. But anyone that wants to download and install ORDS, so that would be oracle.com/rest. If you get this product, which is free and included with your database license, and you run it where your mid-tiers are, it can talk to your database and make these REST APIs and these nice modern web interfaces available for your database. And we're adding features aggressively to SQL Developer Web. It wouldn't be lying if I said SQL Developer Web was the future. We haven't sunset SQL Developer Desktop, but it's not getting the aggressive feature adds. And at some point, we'll port the features that we've done in the web down into a new desktop application. So that'll be exciting. I promised I wouldn't go over the hour. There's 3 minutes left. I'm going to check the QA. Someone's asking about functionality in SQL Developer required minimum privileges. It's all based on what you want to do, Joseph. So if you want to create a table, you need create table or you need quote on the table space. If you want access to active session history, then you need select privs on those views and then execute privs on those packages that call it. So yeah, technically those will be in the docs. It's just based on the feature that you're trying to access. And then Raju's got a question. Can we use 19, 20, or 21 SQLCL to monitor a 12.1 database? Yeah, so right now at the moment, we still support 11GR2, 12.1, 12.2, 19, and now 21. 18 is out of support, and 11GR2 is about to go out of support. Unless you have lots and lots of money and you beg us to keep supporting it, then we'll support 11GR2. So hopefully everyone's got plans to get upgraded to 19C, or you're already there. But for the moment, yeah, our tools, across all of the tools I've mentioned today, you can use any version of supported Oracle database in the cloud, on-prem, on a Docker, on your laptop in Kubernetes, in someone else's cloud. We don't care. If there's an Oracle database, our stuff can get to it and use it. So I think I'm done. I'm happy to keep going if people have questions. If not, I want to thank Viscosity and thank the New York Oracle Users Group for having me. This was a great crowd, like 90, 100 people. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know why, because Viscosity is awesome. I should have expected that. So thanks for that opportunity. And again, if you want to learn more about the tips and tricks, just Google it. Say that Jeff Smith SQL Dev in your question, and you should find it. And if you can't, email me, which again is, don't forget that D. If you forget that D, your email goes to an Exadata engineer, and they never ever forward me your emails. They just go straight to the trash. I don't see any more questions in the Q&A, so I'm going to assume you've had your fill.
Thank you so much, Jeff. And
Bet.
thank you everyone for showing up. Yeah, great crowd today. Awesome questions. Look for that email from Katie Barnes. And we hope you join us again. We've got Willie Hardy speaking for NYOUG and Viscosity in 2 weeks. And we've got many more coming up. So keep up with us. And Jeff, thank you again. Great presentation.
Willie's great. Willie's got the, he'll get mad if I tell you this, but Willie's got that great Scottish accent from The Simpsons, groundskeeper Willie even.
Yes.
So he'll definitely keep you entertained. And he's one of the longest serving executives on the database product management team. So all of the exciting, cool news coming down the pipe for what we're building, Willie's going to have great insight on all of that. So bring your questions for him too. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Take care.